Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. The Afghan Taliban have once again resorted to unprovoked aggression on the Pak-Afghan border, and the Pakistani security forces responded befittingly, killing 8 Afghan Taliban soldiers, including 2 key commanders, and also that led to 16 Afghan Taliban getting injured. We know for a fact that since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan back in 2021, there has been a resurgence of terrorism here in Pakistan. Pakistani authorities have been asking the interim Afghan authorities to take a concrete and decisive action against banned TTP. Fitna al-Khawarij, which is based in Afghanistan, which is operating from the Afghan soil to perpetrate its heinous attacks. Not only this, that the Afghan Taliban had been denying the presence of the banned TTP on Afghan soil. They have also been resorting themselves to these border security clashes by resorting to unprovoked fighting towards the Pakistani security forces. Now, keeping in light of this particular incident that happened on Sunday, we'll be taking the analysis from an esteemed panel of guests as to what does this particular unprovoked aggression on the part of the interim Afghan authorities, the Afghan Taliban, actually depict, and how detrimental this particular approach on the part of the interim Afghan authorities is detrimental to the bilateral, not only the bilateral relationship between Pakistan and the Afghan authorities, but also what sort of implications it could have on the broader regional peace and security. As we have also seen, there has been a pattern of denial on the part of the interim Afghan authorities regarding the presence of banned TTP Fitna al-Khawarij in Afghanistan. Regarding this particular incident, they have also come up with their version, which is contrary to the ground reality. Let me quickly bring in our esteemed panel of guests. We are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr.Fida Bazai, Afghan affairs expert. Dr. Bazai, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. And later on in the show, we'll be joined by some other guests, and I'll be introducing them as they join in. Dr. Bazai, now this particular incident of unprovoked aggression on the part of the Afghan Taliban towards Pakistan, it's not an incident in isolation. Similar sort of pattern we have also seen before. We've also seen, I'll come to that particular point of that border fencing, the gigantic project Pakistan undertook in order to stop that infiltration of the terrorists from Afghanistan here in Pakistan. But let's specifically talk about this incident. What does that actually depict? Why still the Afghan authorities not understanding the ground reality, rather than taking a concrete action against the banned TTP, they themselves resorted to such an act? What's the reason?
I mean, now it is becoming a pattern in the bilateral relationship, especially the Afghan Taliban. They have taken a very declared position now on the TTP. And the effect of that support for the Afghan Taliban, support from the Afghan Taliban to the TTP, we can see in Pakistan, east to Al-Fatah, and in Balochistan, that we have seen increasing activity of the TTP. That activities are only possible when they are having an established network in Afghanistan. Without established network in Afghanistan, they would not have been that emboldened or encouraged to take that extensive activities inside Pakistan. So it is now almost becoming clear that the Afghan Taliban have also taken their position, and they would be supporting Taliban TTP in Pakistan, and Pakistan has approached them through various means. Before, when this regime came in the beginning, Pakistan was politically engaging the regime, and it was requesting it constantly to come for a kind of mediation and to settle this issue bilaterally. But when the Taliban were not resolving to any kind of conflict resolution or any kind of military operation against the TTP, then Pakistan was forced to cut off its relation with the Afghan Taliban and started forcing them for a kind of military operation in order to stop their incursion or expansion on Pakistani side of the border.
So this particular incident, it's not in isolation. Similar sort of incidents since the Kabul takeover by the Afghan Taliban had been taking place towards Pakistan. What does that basically depict as to the mindset of the interim Afghan authorities when it comes to unprovoked aggression along the Pak-Afghan border towards Pakistan?
It looks like Taliban are doing this for two reasons. One is they are already looking for a kind of relationship with India. And with a relationship with India, they are now projecting themselves as an independent actor in Afghanistan. As we might have seen this, you might have seen this thing that as Taliban relation with Pakistan is going downward, its relation with India is increasing. And there is an increasing presence of Indian embassy, Indian personnel and Indian assistance to the Taliban regime. So we cannot ignore that aspect of the bilateral relationship. Second is that domestic support. They were also not having that much legitimacy in Afghanistan. One of the factor was the title of proxy over them, that there was a feeling inside Afghanistan that Afghan Taliban were not a genuine actor, they were proxies of Taliban. So now they are in order to increase their support inside the country, they have also resorted to this kind of policies. The third is their bilateral strong relationship with the TTP. We know that their relationship is consist of over 20 years, and they have been residing and struggling together against the US forces when they were here. So it would not be possible to expect them at this moment, and this is why they are now clearly going on this policy that they have opted over Afghan TTP over Pakistan, and that is bringing them, of course, that India factor, that is bringing them domestic legitimacy in the eyes of those nationalists who were supporting the previous regime, and that is bringing them closer with the TTP against the Islamic IS in Afghanistan.
Okay, so when we specifically talk about this incident of the unprovoked aggression on the part of the Afghan Taliban, there was a befitting response as far as the Pakistani security forces over there are concerned. As a result of their fighting in response, 8 Afghan Taliban soldiers were killed, including the 2 key commanders. Also 16 were injured. Now, quite a befitting response, but at the same time, this particular phenomenon, when Pakistani forces have to respond to such an aggression, we've also seen in the past, there is a certain limitation because we care for the life present across the border also. So in that kind of a circumstance, the limitations or the challenges for Pakistani security forces increase manifold. So how do you think we've seen this befitting response? The Afghan the security forces were targeted and the kind of number that we are getting. So how Pakistani forces can actually overcome those limitations and challenges while ensuring that no loss of life across the border happens, while only targeting those who are trying to fire upon the Pakistani security forces?
I mean, it is very difficult in such a situation to have such a calculated move where you are absolutely operating with precision that it does not damage any it does not bring any collective damage there in the area. At the same time, as we have seen that Pakistan internal stability is coming first. If there is any kind of threat that is coming to the stability and security of Pakistan from the TTP, then I think Pakistani government and Pakistan security forces cannot afford this thing to restrain for a very long period of time. And one of the factor that would be forcing Pakistan government or security forces to go against the TTP.
Dr. Bazai, I'll go to that particular point of how to address that particular threat of TTP, that cross-border infiltration and the kind of heinous terrorist attacks which have been perpetrated by banned TTP, the Fitna al-Khawarij. When we talk about this particular response, when we come to the response of the Pakistani security forces present along the Pak-Afghan border, and this sort of aggression, unprovoked aggression happens from that side. We've seen that in the case of India, when India resorted to unprovoked aggression towards Pakistan, we had that limitation, the challenge, because across the border there is life. there are people about which Pakistani security forces actually care. So in that sort of scenario, given that limitation and challenges, how do you look at this befitting response, specifically and precisely targeting those who were trying to fire upon the Pakistani security forces and checkposts?
Jawad, it is absolutely right that Pakistan does not only care about the lives on both sides of the border, but at the same time there is a very established principle of sovereignty as well. As we have seen that when there were attacks on the US forces in Afghanistan, when they were there, the US forces did not care for the international border or the concept of sovereignty. They were using every kind of means in order to target them, Afghan Taliban, who were operating wherever at that time. So we can see until now Pakistan did not opt for any such a kind of measure where it either bring incursion inside Afghanistan or a large number of civilian death inside Afghanistan. So far it is a very calculated move. It must be appreciated in that sense, but I am afraid that it will be there for how long.
So this particular question with which Pakistani security forces actually operate, but at the same time they have to ensure the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Pakistan isn't breached, and there doesn't happen to be any sort of aggression, unprovoked aggression from across the border. But whenever that happens, so that isn't it pertinent or a classical case at this particular point in history to establish to the world community, look at on one side, we want peaceful, stable and unified Afghanistan. The second number, that Afghan authorities themselves have to fulfill an international obligation. Rather than doing that, they are resorting to unprovoked fighting towards Pakistan. So how do you think this particular case, this recent incident, can help Pakistan sensitize the international community as to that Afghan Taliban are not following the international norms?
Again, it is an important question, but a question arises here that where does the international community stand today? Unfortunately, on the issue of terrorism, they are not as sensitive as they were before. And on the other hand, we can see that there is an Indian lobby, established lobby, they are working over this issue of terrorism. So Taliban, on the one hand, when they are attacking, as I already mentioned before, then they are also a kind of getting that kind of support from various sectors. Yes, it is high time that we project this thing, we pitch this thing, especially Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference is taking place in Pakistan next month. It must be projected as a major issue that Afghan Taliban, which came in power on the promise of not allowing its soil to be used by any terrorist organization against any other country, but through
rather than fulfilling that promise, they are becoming themselves the aggressors, and they are resorting to unprovoked aggression towards their neighbors, particularly Pakistan.
Exactly. They do not only allow their soil to be used by various militant organizations, they also come in their support for direct target against neighboring states.
So when we talk about under the United Nations in particular, is there any sort of a mechanism? I'm curious at this particular point in time, can there be a possibility, because the kind of statement that has come from the Defense Ministry of the Afghan interim authorities, they just like the pattern of denial of the presence of banned TTP on Afghanistan soil, they once again pointed fingers towards Pakistan. Perhaps it was Pakistan which was actually targeting their formation of the checkpost, right? Again, that blame game from across the border. Now, in order to ascertain the facts that if the Afghan Taliban have got any weight in the claims which they are making at the moment, is there any sort of a possibility of establishing a mechanism of having the United Nations observer group that could actually follow through that particular area where this incident had taken place, and they could establish for the fact that it was actually done from the Afghan side? and there didn't happen to be any weight with the claim of the Afghan authorities?
Yes, there are mechanisms like there are different mechanisms in the United Nations where they can ask for investigation of this incident, that where did it took place and what were the reason and who were the exact aggressor in this case. But I don't think at the moment this issue is taken at that level. This is what is needed, that it should be projected at the highest level for projection, that the Afghan Taliban are not only protecting the TTP, they are also attacking.
Okay, so just to understand this particular thing, I'm being curious regarding that. When we talk about Pakistan and India, that particular tension on the border that used to take place. Now, the United Nations Military Observer Group. Now, what I want to understand at the moment is that this mechanism of having the United Nations Military Observer Group to ascertain the facts that who is being the aggressor, who is resorting to unprovoked fighting, is it only doable where there is a de jure authority governing a state, or is it also doable with a de facto authority that is ruling a particular territory?
I mean, there is no such
what is the rule? What is the rule? What is the procedure in that particular regard under the UN mechanism?
Of course, they are only engaging. United Nations is engaging a de jure legitimate government when it is in place. But at the moment, as we can see that the Afghan Taliban are de facto, they are ruling the country, and there are various engagement of international organization for assistance. There is no doubt, I mean, principally there should not be any problem in engaging them in ascertaining this fact, that it should not depend upon, or it does not depend upon the legitimacy of the government now at the moment at Kabul or Kandahar. When it comes to Afghanistan, Pakistan and India, it is totally a different case. It is a very sensitive case. There is a lot, both armies are, there is possibility of war between the two states. This issue is not yet recognized at the international level at the same stage like in India and Pakistan.
So, but under the UN mechanism, is it doable with the de facto authorities or not?
I'm not precisely sure that.
Okay, let me bring in another participant in the show, Air Vice Marshal retired Ijaz Malik, senior analyst, joining us on the phone line. Mr. Malik, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. I really beg your pardon, you are joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Mr. Malik, now this recent incident of unprovoked aggression on the part of Afghan Taliban, then we saw a befitting response on the part of Pakistani security forces, killing 8 of the Afghan Taliban, including 2 key commanders, rendering injuries to 16 others. Firstly, what does it basically depict? Why would the interim Afghan authorities take such a risky measure? Why would they fire upon the Pakistan security forces unprovoked? And how do you look at that response by the Pakistani security forces?
I think it simply indicates their frustration over what they have been expecting and what they have been pursuing as regard the relationship, the triangular relationship, the overt relationship with Pakistan, obviously as a neighbor, and then their covert relationship with the TTP. And before I actually answer in any further detail, as regard your previous question to our colleague panelist, I don't think so that the military observer group like the one we have in Pakistan and India after the 1948 war, that possibility exists. Although this is a question of international law and United Nations Charter, but logically it doesn't look possible, and even if it was legally doable, practically it would not have any significance because
What are the limitations, Mr. Malik, in that regard? Why, even if it was theoretically doable, why not practically on the ground?
Because all what the Kabul regime, interim regime, has been pursuing, they want certain unconditional concessions. For example, they do not want to address any of the concern of global powers or regional powers as regard human rights and women rights and certain other things, but they want their government to be recognized, and they want their financial assets
recognized by the international community. Is it the way to make them recognize the Afghan authorities by resorting to unprovoked fighting towards Pakistan? And then
actually, this is unreasonable. Definitely, it is unreasonable, because what they need to understand that their, being a landlocked country, their dependency on Pakistan is phenomenal. Their economic, entire economic activities are routed through imports from through Pakistan. Pakistan has not been able to leverage that that thing so far as a part of our diplomacy and our efforts to negotiate with them. It's very sad. It is very unfortunate that ever since they have come in power, they have shown a very ungrateful attitude towards Pakistan in general. And they
very pertinently mentioned, Mr. Malik, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. There are a number of key questions that arise after this particular incident of unprovoked aggression on the part of the interim Afghan authorities. Firstly, on when it comes to this particular aggression, what sort of implications the immediate population in that particular border area or along the border have to actually face? What happens to them when such type of aggression happens?
Definitely, this area would virtually become a combat zone, and all those implications which a combat zone of two adjoining neighboring countries at war have faced. That will be applicable whether formally or informally. It will have that same socio-economic effect on the lives of people on both sides. And remember, the area which we are talking about, it has Pashtun ethnicity, and people have, regardless of who rules Kabul and what policy Islamabad has for them, the people have crossed the international border between Afghanistan and the Pashtun belt. They have, family relationships. They have, a lot of close interaction, interaction historically, and it's going to affect the life on both sides. And probably it will not augur well with this general sentiment of the people on both sides. If not Pakistani side, at least they should be mindful of their own people who are involved, because any retaliatory strike or any retaliatory action by Pakistan may not remain focused or limited to the military targets or the threats which are emanating.
That is exactly the point that I was about to ask you, Mr. Malik. The limitations, the challenges when it comes to befittingly respond to such an aggression. Of course, presumably there must be a calculation when it comes to the aggressor side, which is resorting to such unprovoked aggression, in order to perhaps drag the other side by making it to respond to that particular aggression. But we've got those certain limitations in the case of that particular tension when Indian forces used to fire upon Pakistani forces unprovoked from across the border. We saw Pakistani forces had to take utmost care because we care for life on the other side of the border also. So similar, do you think similar sort of limitation stands here in this case also?
Not exactly. You see, the major difference is that across the LOC, on both sides, we have Muslim population. If Pakistan takes any initiative in response to any aggression by India, these are the Muslim people on the in the Indian held illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region, and those people are helpless. They are themselves under siege. But the same is not valid in case of Afghanistan and Kabul regime. These people, many of those notables would have certain influence, and they must, try to negotiate the repercussions and try to persuade Kabul not to take any such initiative or misadventure which could have direct, bearing on their day-to-day living.
As far as the challenges or limitations, are there any sort of limitations when it comes on operational level to respond to such type of unprovoked aggression when it comes to the response from the Pakistani security forces?
Not at all. Let me reassure you, it is just our policy of constraint. It is just our policy which, our great Qaid, envisioned for Pakistan, that we want to live peacefully with all our neighbors, and particularly in, a Muslim brotherly country that we at least claim to, and the country that we have helped for past 40, almost 40 years now, that we have been helping them. We want to live with them peacefully, but we cannot compromise on our own territorial and solidarity issues. So we have all the wherewithal to respond to any level of threat, be it a land operation, be it an operation through air. We can take on, targets 24/7 and day in and out. That's not an issue. It should not be construed as our weakness. It is just a matter of our policy that we want to, restrain, and we want to, give them a chance. We want to give an enduring peace a chance. That should not be misunderstood by anyone.
We talk about Pakistan's position as to Pakistan's desire of a peaceful, stable and a unified Afghanistan. Not only this, but kind of crises that have been facing since the international troops withdrawal. We've seen recently at the 50th OICCFM, Pakistan's Foreign Secretary has once again advocated the case of the suffering of the Afghans. Despite all that, there isn't any sort of reciprocation on the part of the interim Afghan authorities. Even now, why?
Because I think the brand of Islam that they want to implement, the model of governance that they want to implement, it is almost the same which was in their first stunt in government in the 90s. So in that barbarian style of governance, even their own people, the lives, the respect of their own people doesn't matter to them. So that's why they are not bothered. If they do not themselves respect and are interested to look after their own people, why should they be bothered about any outside or any neighboring country having any negative impact on the lives of Afghan people in general?
But how do you look at this particular Pakistan's position regarding advocating the case of the people of Afghanistan at the various fora at the international level?
Yes, Pakistan has been. There have been efforts. There have been at state level. There have been, privately some relief work has been done in the form of food supplies, the medicine, the surgical instruments, and helping them establish, some hospitals even. Pakistan has been doing its bit as a responsible state, but there hasn't been any response. I think because the global powers, they are busy in their own priority issues, and for the time being, Afghanistan is not on their radar to be looked into. I think we should try, and I have been advocating this point, that we should try for a regional cooperation from the SEO, or a new setup maybe, wherein Russia, China, Iran for that matter, because China and Iran are like Pakistan, of course, not to that magnitude, but they are also effective parties of the terrorism which is emanating from Afghanistan. So these regional countries, they should try to use their synergetic influence to put some sense into Kabul regimes for avoiding any misadventure.
There is an upcoming high-level moot of Shanghai Cooperation Organization to be held here in Islamabad in October. So, Mr. Malik, at this particular forum, how Pakistan can utilize this opportunity when the heads of the state come together and deliberate upon the matters of pressing concern, this particular situation that is unfolding in Afghanistan under the Taliban rule, and the kind of approach the Afghan Taliban have been adopting ever since they took over Kabul up till now?
I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and Pakistan government must anticipate this as a golden opportunity and start to do a good homework. And they should, put up the case right on the central stage of the proceeding of the summit, and try to highlight and sensitize all stakeholders about the sensitivity of this issue and what repercussion it would have on the peace and stability in the region, and of course the human dimension of what is simmering in Afghanistan.
Right, let me, please stay with us. Let me take this particular point. This opportunities you've already mentioned in your first take. How could you elaborate in detail that at what level Pakistani authorities could be utilizing this opportunity in order to sensitize at least the regional powers, the members of the SEO, regarding the approach and the attitude of the Afghan Taliban and the situation there?
I mean, SEO is taking place, as we said, in October. And one of the major issues that comes along with economic cooperation with the member state is the security situation here in the region. And one of the fundamental issue of the region is the Afghan Taliban when they come in power. When they came in power, it started affecting security in Pakistan. So it must be projected in a way in order to force the Taliban. China, Russia, and other member countries should be persuaded to start pressurizing the Taliban not to take these kind of policies toward neighboring countries, especially against Pakistan. Because if this spiral of violence starts between Pakistan and Afghanistan, this one of the major beneficiaries of this violence would be terrorism and militancy. This thing will not stop only on the Pakistani border, it will start spreading to all other countries, as militancy is a common threat to all regional countries, whether it is Russia, Iran, China for that reason, even India. So this phenomena of militancy, terrorism, Islamic fundamentalism, this could become a major issue in the region again if they get a support in the kind of Afghan Taliban in Afghanistan. So it must be projected in that terms in order to get support from international community, to pressurize Afghan Taliban to withdraw their support from the TTP and establish a good relationship.
So, okay, in the upcoming SEO, of course, we know for a fact that India happens to be the member also. Firstly, do you expect their head of the state to come and participate in that particular moot? And do you think, after in your second take, if I exactly remember, you pointed towards India. For a fact, we know that it had been the peace spoiler as far as the Afghan peace and reconciliation efforts are concerned. Now, this time around, also, you were of the view that India has got the interest in order to have the instability in Afghanistan and to target Pakistan from that particular side. So, during this SCO, can it be established upon the other member states of SCO that this is India which has been involved in perpetrating instability in Afghanistan, ultimately leading it towards Pakistan?
I mean, there are established reports that when Taliban came into power, India role of its program in Afghanistan, and it started withdrawing from major programs in Afghanistan. But now they started again expanding their presence and interference in Afghanistan. And then there are established reports that Afghan Talibans are now having very strong relationship with the India. This is already recognized and in various international news reports that a relationship started establishing between the two actors. So why would not India be using Taliban? I mean, this is what they are looking. It is a kind of best opportunity for them to use Afghan Taliban against Pakistan. But what would be the major casualty of this policy? It is the ultimate victim, or the ultimate victim of this policy would be the Taliban regime itself in Afghanistan. So it would be one of the stupidest policy of the Afghan Taliban in Afghanistan if they start a kind of supporting Taliban on the in order to get support from India.
Right, Mr. Malik, now your quick comment regarding as to this particular upcoming SCO moot, and do you expect the participation of the head of the state from India, and do you think Pakistan can also sensitize the members of the SCO regarding India's increasing role as a peace spoiler once again in Afghanistan?
My personal opinion is that India may not participate, given the recent precedents. I don't think so. India would participate in this mood just to avoid the same criticism or proceedings that we are contemplating. And secondly, the second part of your question, yes, it is an opportunity, and Pakistan should optimally utilize this opportunity to sensitize all participating delegations, head of states and governments to sensitize about this particular issue.
Air Vice Marshal retired Ijaz Malik, senior analyst, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio, we were joined by Dr.Fida Bazai, Afghan affairs expert. Dr. Bazai, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we'll come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.